One of the topics in the news lately has been affordability, and being in real estate, I deal with housing affordability. When I grew up, a family would have one member who would provide income for the family, the other member stay home and raise the kids. And for too many Americans, that's no longer possible. Now, what is our leadership class telling us? Well, I recently saw I should say, the chief economic commentator of the Wall Street Journal. Now, you would think this would be a guy who would be an expert, who would be thoughtful, say that really affordability is just a mindset. It isn't really data. And I watched this, and I had to go back and watch it again. Did I really hear that right? I want to play this for you and tell me if you're not hearing the same thing I am, and just the same smug disregard for other people. Let's see here.
Really, affordability, it's as much a state of mind as it is an economic condition. People are just in a situation right now where they really, really focus on the things that are getting harder to control. You know, a year ago it was eggs. Well, eggs are down in price now. Now it's beef. We just had a government shutdown. That was all about health insurance affordability. And
So this is a guy who is basically walking from headline to headline saying people think they can't afford, say, their retirement or buying a home or health care or a new car. It's a mindset because it's eggs this week and last week it was something else. No, I am sorry that when I talk to so many people, it's an affordability of a magnitude well beyond not being able to buy eggs this week or fast food next week. Now, this is the chief commentator for the leading newspaper in America, which also happens to be the leading Wall Street newspaper, Greg Ip. Greg Ip is a Canadian, born in Canada, educated in Canada, came down here, worked initially on Canadian economic matters. Well, of course, he grew up with the American dream, and I guess he makes a good salary. I imagine $300,000 or more per year minimum, based on what my research showed me. But for the average American, they cannot afford on one income to buy an average house in America and raise their family and send them to good schools. That's housing affordability. And when people tell you, like this idiot, when they tell you that the issue is your mindset, don't buy that. Now, I'm not saying we should sit around and cry about it. I'm not saying we should give up. I'm saying we should work hard, but not be deterred by the misleading information that comes from our leaders. And it's more than just this kind of nonsense. Let me give you a couple examples how it affects policy. So for example, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are run by the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Administration, and they raise their limits next year for loans that the federal government is basically guaranteeing, you as a taxpayer guaranteeing that if they go bankrupt, you will give up your Social Security, you'll give up your way of life, you will be inflated out of wealth to back up these loans. And what's aggravating about this is the loan limits are $832,000 in average areas. This is where an average home is $400,000 and change. In high-cost areas like California, the loan limits are $1.2 million in a state where the average house is about $1 million. So what this does is you're taking federal money from taxpayers and putting it at risk to guarantee homes for not only for people who own homes so they can refinance and save money on their loans at the cost of people who are renters paying into taxes, and B, you have these loans that are over average. Now remember, this is the loan amount. People put a down payment. So an $800,000 loan, they might put down $300,000, $400,000, $600,000 and buy a $1.4 million house in a country where the average house is $400,000. So we obviously have a housing finance policy that is generating money for the winners in society. And I'm a winner, but I don't need the government to take tax dollars and subsidize me. I'm willing to do it on my own. Here's a case with this program. And remember, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, I've covered this before, are basically bankrupt organizations being run by courts because they're not competent to make their decision, but they're taking your money, it's like going to Vegas and betting with your tax dollars and subsidizing housing for people who own houses already instead of those who don't, and more importantly, for higher income houses rather than the average or below, which should their focus be. Here's another example. In California, we've spent, this is hard to read, so I'll just summarize this for you. We have spent in the last 8 years, $40 billion on housing affordability programs. We spent $40 billion on housing affordability, and during that same time period, the average house in California went from $469,000 to $904,000. So we spend money, we take tax dollars, and people, as a result, move out of our state because they can't afford the taxes or don't want to pay them. We take tax dollars and spend it on programs to make housing affordable, during which time the housing has become less affordable. That's why government programs are never the answer. The answer is a government to stop with programs and stop taking our taxes. Now, another example as to why housing isn't affordability. When I started in the business in the mid-1980s, one way people commonly got started owning houses was they would first rent a house or rent an apartment. Then they'd buy a condo. And the step up from an apartment to a condo was less than an apartment to a house because you're getting less extra. But it was a good intermediate step for so many homeowners. And I regularly have buyers who owned a condo and then either would rent it out or would sell it with the equity and turn that into their next house. And really, housing in California, we almost have no condos being developed at all. In fact, the numbers are down 90%. Why is that? Well, there's one law passed in 2002. The trial attorneys in California lobbied the state to make every condo building basically a bullseye for lawsuits. The result is, and I saw this as a realtor, every single condo association got sued for building defects on top of the normal HOA challenges that they would have, that normal housing homeowners association challenges they have. Every single condo built had building defects that you could just count on, and it destroyed the market. And now our building of condos in California is about 10% of what it was in 2002. Again, one law changed. California had condos all up to 2002. Everything was fine for the most part. And now we have that whole most affordable link from apartment to house, the intermediate step of a condo, taken away basically by a bad law that's never been reviewed, but has really enriched, unfortunately, certain people. Let me give another example of where the costs of housing are ridiculous. Now, this is a minor cost, but a credit report, if you get a credit report, when I started in the mid-'80s, a credit report would be like $5 or $6 per person. So husband and wife would be two, maybe $10 or $12. You might need two reports merged. That's $12. 6 times 2, 12. Times 2, $24 would be the total cost. As a mortgage lender, we often did them for free. It was a cost of doing business. If a customer turned in all their paperwork, we'd run the credit as a courtesy at no cost to check their qualifying. And then there was a time back in the 2000s when, with that credit report, you could then have the loan underwritten online, which is great. It was kind of like AI before there's AI. And so you would meet with a customer and then be able to tell them, hey, you're qualified as long as you provide this document, you're approved. And we use those automated underwriting and desktop documents to get people pre-approved today. Now, you might think of all things in the world that would go down in price, it would be a credit report, because all the credit report is really is accessing data. I mean, in our entire world, everything online has gone down in price, has been disintermediated, has been reduced in price, with one exception. The same three credit companies when I started the business in 1985 are still the same three, and they just charge more for their credit report for basically the same report. And now it's gotten so much that when buyers buy houses, they're being charged $100 to $250 for a credit report. So much so that now some lenders are charging that money at the application stage. And this is an example. What industry has gone up in value for something that's pure technology? The answer is there's nothing else. But the housing industry has been abusive to the average home buyer. And this is just one more example where Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're very busy financing loans for wealthy politicians and for upper class Americans, but they're not at all focused on actually making homes more affordable for the average consumer. Okay, well, all that said, affordability is real. When I grew up, as I said, one family member could make money, the other one could raise the family. Pretty much that doesn't exist anymore. Almost every home buyer I do loans for, there's two incomes, unless they're older or semi-retired. I just don't see that anymore. What do you see? Am I reacting, or is housing less affordable than it used to be? Love to see your comments. Let's take a look at the regular market, do a quick market update. Interest rates continue to kind of inch down. Last week closed about 6.22%, and overall continued their march to the lowest rates over the last 3 years. And it's funny, I commented on this in the news a couple of weeks ago, but in the news they always kind of poo-poo what's the effective interest rates. It's not that big a deal. It's just a coincidence that when rates come down, the mortgage applications jump up. No, it's not unrelated. Of course, when rates come down, the house is less expensive to a buyer. When rates come down, it's more valuable to the homeowner of the property. Of course, lower rates are good for people who want to buy houses and for people who own houses. The only people that are not good for lower rates are Wall Street investors who want to make excess money by overcharging people. So overall, we want to do everything we can to lower interest rates. And the fact they've come down is a good sign. It shows that our market is probably going to be moving in a positive direction over the next few weeks. Let's take a look at the other side, which is inventory. You have supply and demand, and where's supply? Well, supply continues. If you look at this chart, while inventory is above the last 3 years, or I should say 4 years of COVID, it's still below any year pre-COVID. So we still have historically low inventory. Traditionally, it drops off pretty quick at the end of the year, and that's probably going to happen. But again, inventory still remains at all-time lows. What's that mean? At a minimum, it means that we can't have a national housing price crash unless something changes. Because if there's not enough houses to sell, sellers won't cut prices and cause them to continue to go down in price. And so I think overall it's a healthy market for buyers who want to buy properties. A little more inventory perhaps than there was last year, and they should take advantage of that. Now, real estate is local. If I look at Altos Research, you'll see that they rate our market as 35. It's gone up the last 2 weeks. Slight seller's market to slightly more seller's market, but still, it's pretty slight. It's not like it was during COVID period, but the advantage is to the sellers. So for buyers, this has been about as good a chance as you could buy over the last couple of years. A little more inventory, lower rates, making it more affordable. Good chance to buy a property if that's what you're looking to do. Okay, let's take a look at the news. One thing I just caught, I missed this. A great article by a real estate competitor, Clever Real Estate, where they took the own words of these automated valuation models, or AVMs. The most famous one is Zillow's Zestimate, and Redfin has one as well. And they're on other websites as well. Realtor.com has 3 of them. But what's fascinating is they noticed something I missed, which is that by their own admission, Zillow is plus or minus about 2.4%, which is about plus or minus the listing agent's commission. I think that's kind of funny. And Redfin plus or minus 2%. For properties that are on the market. Properties off the market, Zillow is 7.54% plus or minus, and Redfin is 6.4% on average off the market. So what does that tell us? Well, one thing I noticed is that whenever properties off the market, Zillow's numbers are pretty much worthless, though I have to explain to a seller that and overcome that in order to get the property listed. But what I also noticed, as soon as we list the property, the Zillow estimate or the Redfin price, which is some fancy computer program, almost always goes right to where the list price is. And even when a property's on the market for over 90 days, the Zillow estimate and Redfin are almost exactly where the list price is most of the time. And the answer is, I think they're probably right that that's about where it will sell for. So if they want to look good, then they stop becoming accurate and focus on what looks good. And I think the thing I also tell sellers that you have to remember all the time is Zillow is in the business of selling leads. They're not in the business of advising homeowners where to list their property. So when you see an estimate, remember that's just designed to get as many buyers as possible to buy the lead from a realtor, and for realtors to buy the leads and give them to their real estate staff to try to sell your property. It does not necessarily mean, it's not designed to be accurate. There was a time that was their focus, but these days it's just pure advertising. Okay, speaking of what not meeting was designed to be, update, if you follow me on the Compass hidden listing trick, they call it something else. This is where Compass basically lies to, I think, buyers and says, our house was on the market for the last 3 weeks. It was in our system of some sort. And they tell sellers, oh, you'll get more money if we hide your listing for 3 weeks and we attempt to double end it and somehow we'll make more commission, but that's better for you. Fascinating statistic by MDP Research, which is a professor out of Colorado who has a close relationship with Compass. He noticed that of the private exclusive listings, which is what Zillow is calling, what Compass is calling their hidden listing trick, they noticed that the percentage of their inventory has gone down from 29% to about 23.6%, a drop of about 20% of their usage. And so it tells you that Compass agents are rejecting this, and or customers are rejecting this and seeing this as nothing more than a ploy to line Compass's pockets at the expense of their customers and fooling prospective buyers of properties. But again, the proof of the pudding is the eating. Even though Compass has more listings and they have more agents because they've done some acquisitions, and the number of their private excuses has slightly gone up, as a percentage of their listings is gone down. And that just tells you again that this program, I've said this before, is going to fail. There's no way that a business in the long run can make money by lying to their customers to make more at their expense, as well as get away with fooling prospective buyers of the property. It's just the economics of that just are not going to work. I predicted that, and I stand by that prediction. Okay, continuing here, I live in Los Angeles. How are we doing post-fire? Are we rebuilding? And from time to time, we see different pronouncements about all the good things we're doing to help the rebuilding. Well, unfortunately, last week, the LA City Council again voted to delay waiving certain fees for reconstruction. And a lot of people showed up and were disappointed. They wanted the city to waive. Now, I do have some mixed feelings. I get that our city basically just wants the property to build low-income housing and distribute it to their political patrons and let their builders who give them kickbacks build those houses. So that's really where the pressure is. I think the other thing is it's hard to be sympathetic when people want to rebuild a $3 and $5 million mansion waiving fees. But on the flip side, these people paid taxes and paid fees to build their houses and own their houses. And all they expected was a fire department that had water in the reservoir. And apparently in Los Angeles, that's too much to ask. They're entitled to have some fees waived to rebuild the house. So I get their argument, and I am somewhat sympathetic while it's not normally my course. So the city council, though, finds that to be a bridge too far. We're too busy giving money out to all kinds of people from around the world to actually help people whose houses burned down due to our incompetence. But so how are we doing overall? How is our rebuilding effort? Well, the city of LA, we put out a tweet on Friday. The Mayor Bass, really excited to announce the first house got approved to be reconstructed. Hey, yay, Team LA. We have one down and 12,999 to go. And this one, actually, though, it's not quite a victory, isn't a family moving back in the house. It's a model home. Now, the good news is there's a company who's looking to build a model and then build other houses to help people rebuild. And I think that's a good thing. But that's the one house that got approved in the city of LA, and the mayor tweeted out, major milestone, first house approved, and it's been, I don't know, it's almost a year. Heartbreaking, really, again, on one hand, hard to be sympathetic, on the other hand, how not to be. People lost their houses, they lost their communities, they lost their lives. So what's happening? You know, where are we headed? I predict in the beginning, we will never rebuild more than 20% of those houses. It will never happen in my lifetime. Hope to live longer, but I don't see that happening. I saw an update on, that I think is a good example of this, Lahaina in Maui, 2.5 years later, a war zone still. Just unbelievable how few has been rebuilt and some of the most desirable real estate in the world. And I think this is similar to what we should expect 2.5 years later in Malibu and in the Palisades along the ocean. And these are the areas. Just heartbreaking to see what's not going on there. And I think overall we have a problem with our governing system. I think somehow there's a disconnect between what people want and what we're getting through our city, state, and local governments. And we have to have the courage to talk about it. And we have to have the courage to be honest about it. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, the opposite. I wish the best for people when to rebuild their houses in the Palisades. I wish the city would do its job and approve more rebuilding more quickly. And I think overall it's a very difficult situation, and I wish those people the best. So what do you think? Give me your comments, like, subscribe if you like this, reply. If you think I'm out of line, let me know. But I think overall, housing affordability is something we as citizens have to fight for. I'm a real estate agent committed to helping people be able to afford their dream, whether it be owning a home and or investment property. If I can help in any way, reach out at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And as always, make today your best day ever.